Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're doing report cards on the NWSL, and today's topic is Kansas City Current. This is the long version. There is a short and a link below if you want to check that out instead. But here's what we got going on today. Honestly, I was not expecting this to be what I'd be rating the Current as 5 games in, but the overall grade is a C, and this team has felt like a team that's caught between surviving and trying to rediscover who it is over the last 5 matches. Because on one hand, there are 2 wins and 3 losses through 5 games. 2 wins at home, 3 losses on the road. And the first one at home was not very convincing. And on the other hand, they've had to deal with some major absences, some major change, and now finally maybe a little bit of hope coming back into the picture. With Shawinga and stuff coming back and some other things. So again, overall grade is C, and I think that's more than fair. The team's not a disaster, but it's not good enough for what they're expecting. They're nowhere close to what people expect from Kansas City, especially their own fans. And, they had a nice comeback win against Utah in the opening match. But it's Utah. No offense to Utah, but they're still finding their way. They are not a top tier team yet. In the Kansas City Current, we're opening a season at home. That should be an automatic win. But you can look at that kind of result and say, okay, maybe they're still going to be dangerous, but then came the reality check. 3 games in a row on the road, and they were all losses. They lost to Chicago, okay, which Chicago is a nightmare Jekyll and Hyde team right now, but they lost to Chicago. Some teams are beating Chicago, 4-0, and not Kansas City though. And they lost 3-0 to Seattle. That was a beating. And then they lost, of course, to 2-0 to Portland. And the Thorns are on a run. So to be fair, out of the teams they played, Thorns are probably the top team in the league right now, regardless of the standings. They're just a little more consistent for the most part. So 3 straight losses, and for a team like Kansas City that's built, its identity on pressure, speed, and attacking fear that into the hearts of defenders and all that good stuff. That tells you that this group has not looked itself. Even if just looking at stats, you could tell that without even watching the games. Just things are way down consistently enough that you're going, wow, did they lose everybody? And that's not the case. So now, to their credit, they just beat Gotham at home with a nice little. That was a fun match to watch if you're a neutral. Although Gotham, again, they're having their own struggles. So you see the Shield winner and the playoff winner both struggling and stuff, but it was an entertaining match, okay? So, that win does matter, though. That is 3 more points in the standings, makes them climb up somewhere around 9th, I believe. Because if they'd have dropped that one, though, too, 4 games in a row, and you're losing to Gotham at home, wow. We'd be having a different conversation today. It's amazing what 3 points will do for your whole psyche and just the way things work. Instead, they stopped the bleeding. They got back on, in the win column and reminded everyone that there's still some quality there. So now the attack, they get a C- so far through 5 games because by Kansas City standards, this attack has not been good enough. And the biggest reason is obvious. Shawinga missing for the first part of the season is not a small problem. It's a massive problem. You just don't remove the 2-time defending MVP and Golden Boot winner and just think everything's going to be the same game after game. That's not going to happen. That's never going to happen for anyone. And without her, though, they look very fragile offensively, way less explosive, less terrifying, and a lot easier to defend. The edge hasn't been there on a week-to-week basis, and they scored twice against Utah. They scored once against Chicago, and they scored twice against Gotham. But they got shut out a couple times in there, okay? And the attack hasn't been dead. Davinia has contributed a lot. Bethune is finding her way, and she's made some good, especially this last game, some very good penetrating passes and stuff, and she's going to get better and better. They do need to get Allie Sentnor the hell out of the way of Bethune, and they've got to find a way to utilize Sentnor's gifts to the best of her ability because, well, we're going to cover her a little later. There's nothing against Sentnor. She just needs to fit the puzzle a little better than they're using with them. So the attack's not been dead. It's just not been up to the Kansas City Current standards. And their standard usually is we're going to overwhelm you. We're going to give you nothing defensively, and we're going to overwhelm you on the attack. And they just haven't been that way yet. So Shawinga's back, though. She'll continue to get better week after week. So the midfield, though, they get a C, okay? And this is where it gets a little interesting because you could argue that Bethune is a better offensive midfielder and playmaker than Hutton. But Hutton just does so much. I don't think she was getting enough credit in this good team. She cleans up so much in front of your defense, and she can make offensive plays at the same time. And I'm sorry, $1.1 million for Claire Hutton is absolutely robbery, okay? Because I think they're going to regret that. And I'm going to tell you right now, I think Hutton will be sold overseas, most likely to Arsenal by 2027, the end of 2027, and she's going to set a record when that transfer happens. Whatever the standard is, she'll go above it. I say it'll probably be $3 million minimum when she's transferred again. So, but anyway, her loss and Bethune coming in always was going to mean the midfield was going to need to have some time to settle. And you can see that in the performances where it hasn't come together. There's been stretches where you can tell that they're trying to get their rhythm and control back and looking sort of like the KC of last year. But then that balance disappears and, you're like, oh, what happened there? So they're not completely broken. They're just not fully convincing yet. And for me, the midfield gets the C because the talent's there. The command and control of the game has not been there often enough for KC. And too many games out of these 5 where they've looked reactive instead of proactive, if you know what I mean. Definitely not dominant all the time. And for a club with big expectations like they have, that's obviously going to be a problem for you. So defense also gets a C, but they get a C minus really. And here's where the grade starts dropping. 3 losses in a row and goals conceded in key moments that switch momentum. And there is a difference between when you give up goals and the things. And for me, psychologically, if you look back at games you've seen where you have a big miss for your team, okay, and then you get scored on within a couple minutes later, you would say, well, mathematically, that's just a 1-goal swing. But mentally, it's like a 2-goal swing because you went one from the positive column, took one away, okay? You're forgetting. There's a number in the middle there of 0 if you're actually doing scoring like hockey. So a +1, a 0, and a negative. It's a 2-goal swing mentally, and it affects teams like that. So when you give up goals is a problem as well, and they were giving some bad timing goals, okay? I think the big red flag is getting whooped by Seattle 3-0 because Seattle hasn't found their feet yet this year either. And they don't scare me in attack. They're always going to be solid, okay? With Harvey in control of Seattle, they're always going to give you a game. But holy crap, you should not lose 3-0 to them. The Portland loss was another match where, they got shut out and couldn't keep themselves, alive long enough to turn, momentum. And reality was, when I watched that Portland game, I think it could have been more than 2-0 at the end. And it was just more Portland not finishing a couple chances and and things, and maybe that last pass. But if they had gotten it, it might have been a real beating again, maybe worse than 3-0. So you've got people that are out though. Who's still out? Season-ending injury. I think Cook is out. Gagne is out. There's some other questions about player ability for a couple others. I think they could use another midfielder coming in at some point. And so. So some of their problems are not just bad defending. It's roster unavailability, disruption, whatever you want to call it. And still, if they're going to pass the eye test, they've got to improve their balance and cover a little more. And they've just been more vulnerable than they should be. So that's why they get the C minus, okay? Coaching grade, incomplete, but trending towards a C, okay? Chris Armas was named the head coach in January, and my eyebrows went up, okay, and not for the reasons you expect. One, I was shocked he was coming to the NWSL, and not because he's better than league. He's not, but pay-wise, it's a big difference, as I'm sure you guys know. And I thought he would try to stick in MLS because I don't know if ultimately Chris Armas will be a world-class manager. But I like the man very, very much. And I've said before, he's a very honest manager. He works hard. He tries to get better. He's humble. Is he the biggest tactical genius in the world? No. And I think he would say that himself. And because he's so honest, he said a few things in press conferences and stuff that red flags for me. You shouldn't say certain things aloud. Don't say, oh, I'm learning a lot about women's soccer. You're the freaking manager, dude. Okay. whether you are or not, keep that crap to yourself. It does not build confidence in the neutrals or the people that just want to see you fail type of thing. Okay, so I'm not going to bury any coach 5 games into this because first of all, they have the job and I do not have the job and you do not have the job, and they're under tremendous pressure day after day. Okay, especially when there's some big changes to this club too. You can't just say, well, we'll just continue on what Andrzejowski was doing and stuff. You just lost Claire Hutton. You've got to bring in Bethune, who's a big-time playmaker for you, and have her adjust to the team around her, which is different from the way she was playing for the Spirit. And you're missing your 2-time Golden Boot winner. Okay, that's a big problem. Okay, I'd rather have their roster than the freaking Boston Legacy's roster to start the season. But again, not throwing him under the bus or anyone else after 5 games. I'd just be lazy on my part. So. But I also can't just hand out a flattering, grade because it's early and that I like the man. Okay, so the team lost 3 straight on the road and they look like crap doing it. He's got to fix that stuff. They've lost some of their identity on attack, and the performances have been uneven. But obviously there's a plan there for KC, and we'll see how they execute it in the next 5 games. But again, the coaching grade's kind of incomplete. He hasn't been there that long. So the Gotham win will help them mentally, takes a little pressure off of Armas as well. If Shawinga is getting healthier week after week, that also changes the equation for them. So the real question is, can Armas, turn this into an actual reset during the international break? And they may not have the time. There's so many call-ups. How much time are they really going to have? Maybe like 4 days out of the 19 that are between games. But the best bright spot has been Dabinia. I mean, she's just been fantastic. I think all 5 games she's been fantastic. And I can't say that really with confidence about anyone else on the team at this point. So she's been a big stabilizer for them. And when there's been that solid composure, connection, and quality in the final round, she's been a part of that. One of the first players there that you see, boom, making the play. So right now, Kansas City needs more of that from their other roster players of note. And that's, leads me to the next biggest concern. The identity. Does the identity remain somewhat of the same of the last few years? Or do they really need a whole new identity to play under Chris Armas? And that remains to be seen at this point. So either way, they've got to find that identity if they want to, compete for the Shield again. If it's just a matter of making the playoffs, they're going to make the playoffs. There's no doubt about that. So I think really that they've just not looked like themselves yet, but it's 5 games in. Last year at this point, though, they already felt like they were ruthless. They felt inevitable by game 10 last year. You know what I mean? If you think back, it was just, even when they were out of it, they were in it, you know what I mean, in different games, and they just struck the fear. So they've just been, not as sharp as they need to be, a little more human. And yeah, the injuries matter and all that stuff, but roster turnover matters as well, and a new coach matters. But at some point, the standard still has to remain the same for KC, and this team's supposed to be a contender. And right now, they're not showing that they're a contender. Right now, they're just at times look like they're trying to survive the month and get to the break. So my final verdict, again, like I said, is a C. It's not because they're hopeless. It's not because the season is over or anything. There's so far to go. It's just going to be really interesting. But they beat Gotham, and now they're 2-3, and that changes things. 2-3 is a hell of a lot better than 1-4. And Shawinga has now been, she's removed from the SEI, and she contributed to the first goal, got her 40 or so minutes in, and will continue. God, I hope she didn't get called up. I didn't even check that. She needs some fitness training in that, but she does not need international matches. Hell with that. I would not risk her for that. So, but with her coming back healthy, if they get a little reset mentally, if everyone has a good time out on their call-ups and the people around still hanging out and not going to international games can get some rest, some mental breaks and stuff, I think you're going to see the old KC coming back over the next 3 games. But that game against Spirit coming up is going to be so big for both of them right after the break. And that's a big game for both of them, and I can't wait to see that one. And as a Spirit fan, I hope Spirit win, but we'll get to the Spirit's grade in another video. So anyway, a C overall. Let me know what you think their grade is this early in the season in the comments below, and if you would, like and subscribe. There's also a shorter version of this if you don't want me to waste 14 minutes or so of your time just rambling on. But, put this on in the background and do your work and let my voice put you to sleep. So anyway, I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for stopping by.